The importance of Joan of Arc, or Jeanne d'Arc as she calls herself today, is so prevalent with this changing world of uncertainty. And it has to be said that the injustices that are going on around the world are very similar to the injustices throughout time. But we've reached a stage where now we're seeing some very obvious things happening in life that are not correct. Whereas as in feudal times, let's say the super rich or the empowered are grabbing more and more, and the poorer people, the working people, are getting less and less, and the restrictions are becoming similar to that feudal time. And Jeanne had a lot of courage, and that courage came from her spirituality.
Insight and Awareness Spiritual Explorer. Soul intuitive, emotional and spiritual mentor and award-winning author, Lorraine Nylon.
Welcome, explorers, and thank you for being part of the adventure. Today, our guest is Mike Cavalli, and he's an interesting medium, and he's going to talk to us about the importance of understanding Joan of Arc. So we're going left field, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about Joan of Arc and why is she important to our spirituality to be aware of her.
Well, thank you, Lorraine, first of all, for having me on your show. The importance of Joan of Arc, or Jeanne d'Arc as she calls herself today, is so prevalent with this changing world of uncertainty. And it has to be said that the injustices that are going on around the world are very similar to the injustices throughout time. But we've reached a stage where now we're seeing some very obvious things happening in life that are not correct. Whereas as in feudal times, let's say the super rich or the empowered are grabbing more and more, and the poorer people, the working people, are getting less and less, and the restrictions are becoming similar to that feudal time. And Jeanne had a lot of courage, and that courage came from her spirituality. She had immense amount of faith, and despite being a very young woman of 19 years of age, she was very astute, very articulate, and she was very, when she walked into a room, heads turned. And this was basically because of her understanding of life and spirituality. She had courage, and she worked from the heart center. And when you work from the heart center, love doesn't fear consequence. It just does what's right. And I think Jeanne, at that period of time, set an example and a lesson to all of us about courage. Now, we have courage. We're not going to end up the same fate as Jeanne d'Arc, but we can do life-changing situations, either within ourselves or locally, or be part of a global collective that can make some changes. I like to see it as moving into the fifth dimension, where there's abundance for everyone, joy for everyone, and peace for everyone. And I use the word justice for everyone, not in a vengeful sense, but in the sense that there cannot be real peace without justice. We on the earth plane look at justice and we want vengeance, but this isn't what justice is about. And that wasn't what Jeanne's justice was about. It was the right for France to rule its own country. And she often gave the English the opportunity to leave France and go back to their shores before much more blood was shed. So she didn't want war. She didn't want all these battles. She just wanted peace, and the justice was for the English to leave France. And today we must learn that lesson. And when we look at justice that we seek, I'll give you an example. Our former Chancellor in Austria here is on trial for charges of corruption. And many people don't like him and want justice, but they want that vengeful justice. whether he's found guilty or not. But if we want justice, we just should send out that love energy, that justice be done, and whatever the consequences, the consequence. If he's innocent, whether we like him or not. And so this is what Jeanne teaches us, actually, that we must live our lives in a spiritual way, and that our justice is not the justice of the spiritual life, and that we should live in peace. And here's a great example. It's, we can say, just because you're not my friend, you're not my enemy either. I still
Yeah.
want you to eat, but not at my table.
Yes. I
And
like
I
that.
think
Yes.
that's the best way of putting it. And so
Yeah, that's a lovely way.
this is just the scratching the surface of what Jeanne teaches us.
Right. Oh, and I think that is, important message really, is that, yeah, I don't want to take, I want you to eat, but not at my table. So I
Exactly.
can, yeah, you're not for me, I'm walking away, but I wish you no ill will, which is a hard place to get to if you have been, you know, feel like you've been on the end of, I work with a lot with narcissistic abuse and childhood abuse and things like that. So, so that's a very hard place for someone that's experienced that to get to there. So,
Yeah.
and why, what other lessons have you learned through your relationship with Joan of Arc? And can you explain what relationship you're having?
With the relationship, first of all, that I have with Jeanne, and it took me a long time to realize this, and I kept this in the dark for a very long time till she gave me the word that it was okay to come out, as it were, with her as my guide. But to backtrack on this, I first had my association with Jeanne d'Arc when I was very, very young. And I remember watching a film. It was a rerun of the Cecil B. DeMille film of Joan of Arc, I think. I was only 5 or 6, and I remember watching this, and I remember crying through it. And I wiped my tears because I was this young boy, and I didn't want mum to come in and find this macho 5-year-old crying. But ever since that, I could never get Joan of Arc or Jeanne d'Arc out of my mind. And eventually, I grew up, and Joan of Arc kept coming back and coming back and coming back and coming back, until one day I went to a seance. Well, it was a table tipping seance, and I nearly fell off the floor when Jeanne come through. And I knew it was her, because when you first do table tipping, you ask some questions for verification.
Okay, so table tipping, explain that for our listeners.
Uh,
What's that?
Table tipping is it's a physical form of mediumship, and I do this every week with our group, where I have a coffee table, and I put my hands on the table, and now with me, almost immediately, the table starts moving with my hands on it, rocking backwards and forwards, and we ask Jeanne the questions. I know no need to ask verification questions now. Who's here? I know what she feels like when she comes through, and I get this feeling across the width of my head, right across my third eye, like it's a bandana, and I know this is Jeanne. And so she answers all the questions that
And so,
people.
is the table? I have seen it on one of your videos. Is the table moving because of the energy in the room, or is it just like, do we know why the table's
Yeah,
moving?
it's Jeanne's energy moving through me, through my fingertips, and out
Right.
onto the coffee table.
Okay.
and
Okay.
and so she answers these questions. Initially, it starts off as yes no answers, but then we've learned more techniques, when she's laughing, when she says the question is incomplete, and when she talks about patience. And she also tells me that she's not particularly happy working through the table, that I don't need the table, and I should just trust what she gives me. But
Okay.
Jeanne being Jeanne, she's very, very patient with somebody like me who's the most impatient person in the world. So this is what table tipping is, and um, we do this every week. And so that was my association with her. And I did have a past life regression once, and I can't verify this, but I'll mention it and let people make up their own minds, that I apparently lived with Jeanne in that time, in that campaign. And I was in a church, I was making crucifix, that was my job, and she come in to pray, and I was such in awe of her that I just put everything down and followed her. As I say,
Which
I
was
can't.
actually that was quite common in that time, wasn't it? That people were
Yeah.
following her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, absolutely.
yeah.
This was uh, the major problem for Jeanne, that the church had no power anymore because the people would only listen to her. The English didn't like her, obviously, and the king. The problem with the king was that she was found guilty of heresy, and now this undermined his position because he was now crowned king by a heretic, and that didn't look good either. So basically, for all her good work, everyone wanted her out the way now, which they
Yeah.
eventually got. Which is, but you know, the prophecy, she knew this was going to happen to her. She understood the prophecy, and this is the work she come to do. And in much the same way that Judas betrayed Christ, it had to be done in order to fulfill the prophecy of Christ. And we know that Jeanne, when she was in the spirit world, had to have agreed to have done this job, to come here and do this. Otherwise, she wouldn't have done it. And in fact, uh, this prophecy of Jeanne d'Arc was made by Merlin 800 years before she came to be. So it's from an earthly perspective, it's a very, very long time scale.
I read that in the research when I was researching for the podcast, and I was like, oh, there you go. Like just little bits of information that I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And how do you think that is relevant to how we're treating people now, and how we as humans have we evolved from that point? Do you know?
Well, yeah. Most of us have evolved now. Uh, Many of us now, in many aspects of our life, are in this 5D awareness vibration. There are still people who are very much in this 3D construct, which was very much of the 15th century. It's very much a materialistic world. Nothing wrong with material things. We should have them for our benefit, and the technology that we have today. 5D awareness says that we use the technology for our benefit, but those in the 3D world become slaves of the technology, that being the difference. So we have evolved. We now understand a lot more, really, as bizarre as it sounds, that killing is wrong, but all forms of killing, you know, if killing is wrong, then we have to say that government executions, like in the United States, an eye for an eye is wrong. You can't say, for example, you killed this person, so it's the government's right to kill you. That's just a ridiculous way of thinking. If killing is wrong, it's wrong, full stop. So many countries have evolved from this now and understand that these uh, public executions by governments is not correct. We understand more now about the nature of animals than we did back then. We understand that we are all connected now. Um, that humans, animals, the plant kingdom, we're all one. And this is something that didn't happen back in the day. And you know, there was actually scientific experiments from the Heart Math Institute with random event generators that showed that Mother Earth understands our feelings and our emotions. And for example, they put these random event generators all throughout the world. And we knew, for example, 4 hours before the planes first hit the Twin Towers, we knew that something was going to happen. We didn't know what it was, but the random event generators went from random to non-random, indicating we knew something was going to happen. And this happened for the tsunami, and this happened for all kinds of things. And it does show that Mother Earth and humans are connected. And of course it should be, because our heart resonance frequency is exactly within the same frequency as Mother Earth. This is something that they
Right.
didn't know back in
Yeah.
feudal times. So
Yeah. 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 Oh, no, it's interesting. So, what do you think that humanity needs to acknowledge and understand for us to keep evolving and moving forward?
we need to, as people, as society, learn to have the courage to do the right thing, even in the
Mm.
face of adversity, which Jeanne did. We see this in the documentary about Joan of Arc that I done at the end. We show people of courage. Rosa Parks refused to sit at the back of the bus simply because she had different colour skin for us. She
Yeah.
worked with the heart energy, didn't feel consequence. We see Martin Luther King talk about, the I have a dream speech where all the children of the world and so on and so on, had courage, worked from the heart center. We remember the tank man from Tiananmen Square who stood in front of the tanks to stop the tanks moving forward. This is how we've evolved, and this is what we must do. And we must take courage, no matter how small it is, step by step. And that courage in moving forward can be just saying no to someone, to your
Yeah.
boss who's picking on you, for example, to say no, to say that isn't right. When we start doing all this and the collective energy builds up, boy, we become unstoppable as a society. And this is an important thing that we can do. I'll just give you an example. Um, we spoke about the table tipping with Jeanne d'Arc, and I spoke to you off air about we were doing a lot of conspiracy stuff, which I had to stop because this is the power of the collective. One of the questions was asked in in Austria, they were going to impose the medical intervention on all people, and those that didn't would have consequence. And Jeanne said, it won't happen in Austria. Then they signed into law that it's going to happen. Everyone in Austria will be forced to have the medical intervention. Jeanne said, it won't happen. Then the president ratified it and said, it's now coming in. Jeanne said, it won't happen. And so people got into the fear energy, and I started saying, look, keep in the positive energy, focus on the world you want. Jeanne says it won't happen. And lo and behold, it didn't happen. And it wasn't because Jeanne said it, it was because the collective energy of people saying, well, I did take the medical intervention, but it's absolutely wrong to force it on people. And so it never came to be. That's evolution. That's the power of the collective. And that's how powerful we can be as abundance. And the reason society has gone down the road it has is because as a collective, we had been acquiescing to things that wasn't for the greater good of humanity. So we're on the way up. We're getting there. The collective is getting stronger, and this machine for abundance, joy, love for everyone cannot be stopped now. And we can go back to really Jeanne d'Arc, who triggered all of this, because she's still here in society today. She isn't forgotten. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Actually, it is interesting when you look at the people that stood up against what was you can't really say accepted, but it was enforced upon them, and then there's somebody's got to start the campaign, don't they,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
change to occur.
yeah,
So, what
yeah.
kind of prophecies are you aware of our future and as we move forward?
Well, I take my counsel, if you like, from Jeanne, and she says that this what's been going on is a spiritual war, and it's already won, and it's a case now of just keeping the collective going, keeping positive, and moving forward. She does say, and this is very difficult, to keep away from the naysayers, the doom and gloomers, because I know many psychics who have been saying, oh, there's going to be a nuclear war, all this and all that. And that's just nonsense. There is not going to be a nuclear war. Everything in this three-dimensional world is ending. But there's chaos, and you can't make an egg without cracking open the egg. So I say to the people, be patient, be confident. We're leaving this world of feast or famine. We're leaving this world where some people have so many and others have none. This is all ending. There's going to be a world very soon of abundance for all. Even the medical system is changing, that we won't need the invasive medical treatments that we have now that have served us up until this point. Everything is moving. It shows, the trajectory shows from Jeanne that we're moving into a world where there is going to be more stability and more accountability. And that is because the people have wanted it. She also tells me that even those that don't actively take part in the collective by just going about their normal days are now finding themselves stepping into the collective energy because the collective energy is so strong. So it's a case of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, and it doesn't really matter. Everyone's in the collective now, and there is going to be a big push from the dark side. That's very clear, but they can't win anymore. They've had their time on Earth. Um, they have suppressed information about how powerful we are, and what we can achieve individually as humans. They have inaccurately reported history in order to keep us suppressed. This time of keeping people separated. What do they call it? I've forgotten the phrase now, but it's where you separate people in order to able to control them. That's coming to an end as more and more people are coming together and accepting that we are different. We don't have to like everybody in order for the collective to achieve an abundance and love for everybody. That's one of the major things. So the prophecy is about now coming to this position in life where we're all going to have sufficient, and it will be seen in our lifetime.
Oh, right.
It's
Well,
not.
well,
It's not so much a prophecy. But this is a key point. Jeanne said to me once. I said, Jeanne, what can I do more to help people? I feel that I'm not doing enough. And she said, love. And so I said, what else can I do? And she said, what else is there? you know,
yeah. Made
wow.
me smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we talk about love, it's the heart center energy, not the physical heart, it's the heart center. And when we
Yeah.
can express that without fear of ridicule, without fear of contradiction, when we can express this, and when somebody, puts us down and we can just say, okay, you don't get it, and walk away, then we become free. Then our heart is open, and that expression is sent out to the world, and people do pick up on it.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I call that soul maturity, is
Yeah,
when you can sort of acknowledge the truth of your own emotional reaction
yeah,
and then not want to impart a punishment or a retaliation
yeah,
because someone triggered that in you. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. That doesn't mean that you don't assert that you are entitled to keep your boundaries. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Yeah, hold your ground, know when to hold your ground, and know when to walk away, basically,
Exactly.
is a sign of a soul maturity. And working from that, using your own integrity as a compass and valuing that, and that I and you know, integrity and compassion and kindness and love and all those kinds, joy, all those kinds of energy, I call them core essences. They're the truth of our soul. And fundamentally, that's who we are. If we stripped away the body, we're going to find those types of energies. If we can work more from them and value and appreciate them, you know, because they're not valued enough, they're discarded. Yeah. When we pull in and value them, then all of a sudden we walk away, we remember people by how they made us feel.
Yeah.
Like we can forget the act, we can forget the gift, but how they actually made us feel. And if
Yeah.
someone's operating from compassion and integrity, they're going to make you feel good just to be around them.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
put up a post on one of my social media sites of a photographer who took photographs of somebody of a group of people before she said to them, "You were beautiful," and then after she said they were beautiful, and you see the difference. And my punchline to that was, be the reason someone smiles today, because the power of smiling is underestimated as well. But we
Yeah, that's
mustn't
true.
also forget that we're human and we have frailties and we get offended and we get upset. I mean, Christ even had a fight with the bankers, in the temple, and
Yes.
Joan of Arc said, "Where are my voices now when I need them most? They've forsaken her." And she hid out at the court. "You who say you are my judge, be careful how you judge me. For if you judge me wrong, you put yourself in great danger." We're all human. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's how long we hang on to that anger. And we have to sit back at some point, take a deep breath, and go, okay, let's rebalance, let's get it together. And so you're quite right, it's all undervalued. And I think one of the reasons it's undervalued is because we're so consumed with this world that surrounds us. We have to rush to work, rush to get home. We rush to watch a favorite TV program. We spend very little time in nature where we can connect with all things. And this is something that many of us are getting back to now. I mean, we don't have a television in the house. We do, but it's only working to watch DVDs where we sit down to watch a movie. Um, and that's the other thing, you talk about evolution, just going back. We are now seeing the end of the very paedophilic, well, I won't mention the name, cartoon movie maker. And we're now seeing the rise of movies with Jim Caviezel, who you may know from Person of Interest in, Sound of Freedom. More films about people wanting to know really more about what's going on and to do something about it. And just the fact that people are watching The Sound of Freedom puts out an energy in there that gives power to help resolve the situation where children are being kidnapped for the most horrific reasons. So there's a lot of changes in the movie world as well, where people are now not wanting to watch violence anymore. They want to watch something more uplifting, and that's another key, because we see a lot of the big movies now bombing financially, and I think this is a good thing as we see more and more interesting and more uplifting movies being made.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're doing your mediumship, how does it actually feel for you? Like, what are you experiencing?
Um, Depends.
Is Joan of Arc the only one that you, are you a medium and you see, are you a medium that sees lots of crossed over souls, or do you just work solely with the one?
Well, it depends really. When I do one-to-one readings, it's always Jeanne that brings people in. So she will either bring someone in and allow them to communicate, or she will do it for them, depending on how young the spirit is on the other side.
Okay.
She certainly, when it's table tipping, it's her energy, and she allows sometimes somebody to come in and you instantly feel the change of energy. If I'm doing mediumship in front of a live audience, platform work, or I think in America they call it gallery readings, she steps in always first, and then more than often allows the spirit of someone to come in. And I can also sometimes see whoever I'm talking to, a spirit very briefly shadow over the face of someone, so I get an idea of what the person looks like. Sometimes it's clairvoyantly, where I see an image. Sometimes it's clairsentience, where I get the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes clairgustance, and sometimes it's just clear knowing, where it just comes out without me even having to think about it. And that's always the best type of mediumship reading. And also I find myself using words and phrases that she would use that I don't normally use. So for me, it's a mixed bag. For other mediums, they might work solely with clairvoyance, others clairsentient. And what I've noticed is that depending what your gift is, I've noticed a lot of artists, painting artists who are mediums, tend to solely work with clairvoyant, with images. So spirit will use to your strength, as it were. So it's a
Yeah.
mixed bag for me, which I'm happy to
Yeah.
have, actually.
And how did you discover that you had this, do you call it a gift or a talent or a skill? How do you refer to
I
it?
call it a gift, and it's a beautiful gift. This goes back, from what I can recall, to when I was about 5 years of age, 6 years of age. And I wouldn't say it was a near death experience, because I don't think I fully died. I was certainly in an altered state. I was in my bedroom and I was playing on my bed, and my brother was playing on his bed, and I had some marbles. And as an idiot, I tried to swallow a marble because it looked nice, and it got stuck. And my brother saw me slumped over the bed. The next minute I knew, I was at the end of the room, seeing my body slumped over the bed and seeing my brother run out the room saying, "Mum, Mike swallowed a marble and he can't breathe." I saw my mum run into the room, lifted and whacked my back so hard, and the marble fell out. And whoosh, I was back on the bed again. But at that point, I never had any fear. I wasn't concerned whether I was live or dead. It didn't bother me. I was quite content. I didn't see anything else. I was just observing. So that's why I say I don't really believe I was dead. But it was from that experience that I started seeing spirit. And I had a young boy and girl following me around everywhere. My mum would call them my imaginary friends, until it got a bit scary for Catholic mum and dad, until eventually they knocked it out of me and I never saw these kids anymore. But as I grew up, it was a bit like that quote from the Mafia scene: every time I try getting out of this business, something pulls me back in. And so as I grew up, spirit just kept coming to me, and I kept denying it, and I kept denying it, until eventually, I went to spirit communication circles at the spiritualist churches, and I developed, and then I developed healing. And then I pulled out of it again when I was about 21, 22, and it pulled me back in again. And I thought, okay, I guess this is what you want from me. And I do feel happier when I'm doing it. And I do feel happier when I'm serving people, and
Yeah.
when I'm doing something good to society. And now I understand my purpose in life, which is to do healings, to give closure to people who have lost a loved one, and most importantly of all, to tell the story of Jeanne d'Arc, because I think there is so much to offer, and so much compassion, and so much we can learn from her story.
It's interesting in how that you correlating the two, the life that she had and what she learnt from that to how that can help us now. And I'm sure throughout the ages that she's given lots of people insight and information about.
Ye- Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely. Throughout the ages, she's stood the test of time. And, we can go back through century after century. I mean, I haven't looked terribly into century after century. I've sort of skipped from her period into our period because it's so relevant today of what's going on. I mean, I don't wish to continually talk about injustice because it gives people the impression that I'm, you know, banner waving and sword waving. I'm not. It's just that her position back then is similar to what we see today. Even with other countries invading other countries, and we in the West do it in such a way that's justified. And up until this point, the people have said, well, yeah, at least we've got democracy, at least we're free. Um, well, that's breaking down. Also, we can clearly see today that that isn't the case. It's true that we don't live in a world like China, fortunately, but the system is breaking down here today. And it is because of the work of Jeanne d'Arc that we can see what you can do as an individual to make the change. There isn't a saying, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping in a room with a mosquito. Um, and the other saying, one snowflake can't make a difference, but when a whole bunch of snowflakes fall, look at the difference you can make. So we do live in this world where we can make a difference and we can make changes in a very peaceful way. Because when we make changes in a peaceful way, you're working from the heart and then things change. When you work from a position of violence, which happened in her period, in today's society, the enemy, shall we call it, know exactly how to deal with you. Violence is very easy to deal with. You give people all the information they need to stop exactly what you're doing. But when you're doing things from love, they don't know how to act against love. They're not on that vibration. They don't get it. And so this is why we should be on the love vibration. And as you said earlier, you talk about boundaries. This doesn't mean you should go around saying namaste to everyone every minute of the day. It just means that the actual acts of violence we should really avoid now. We have no need for this anymore because of the collective, because of the big numbers. And there were experiments. I don't know, in Australia, have you heard of Dr. Emoto at all?
Oh, the
Maybe,
water.
yeah.
Yeah, the water. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I gave a talk on Ascension into 5D, and it showed that it showed a COVID virus, and when it was put under the water and frozen, then it looked okay. And then they did one where they inserted the word fear into the word, and then the whole spectrum of this water crystal changed to something very arc and very ugly. But then they infused the word love into it, and it shone just like any other crystal. And it shows, even though we don't see these actions, that our thoughts change everything, that we
Yeah.
can change the world with our thoughts. So, as we say, we must be careful what we think. The universe is listening to us, because the universe, it sounds cold, doesn't it? It doesn't care what you want, it only matches your vibration. And this is why we must keep out of the fear energy, and we must keep in that love energy. And the love energy, as we said before, isn't kissy kissing. It's working from that heart center. So when we keep in this energy, the universe will match that frequency, and that's why we don't need violence anymore. And it doesn't take that long if the collective was to do it. If all people were to do it, the situation we have now throughout the world would end, and we'd have a brand new world.
Yeah.
Very easy.
Yeah. And it is important for each individual, if you are looking at spirituality, which is really about understanding yourself and understanding that you're part of a bigger picture, that everything that you resolve that is unresolved within your system, and you know, whether you call it healing or bringing it to an understanding, you're taking that negative energy or that non it's not sitting in consciousness, it's sitting out of consciousness energy. So when, sorry, I'll rephrase that. When you're sitting in the truth of your soul, you're flowing in the consciousness of your soul. When you're in your unresolved emotions, you're working from your soul's unconsciousness, your emotional baggage, and that's the energy that you're putting out. So everything that you resolve, you're actually converting into more conscious energy. So you are part of, even if you think that you're, you know, just trying to deal with your own abuse history or whatever, everything that you are resolving and dealing and coming back to a sense of self-love, you are taking that energy out of the collective.
Right.
So you are part of the collective healing, even if you don't think you are.
Yeah, exactly. And in the same way, if you hold on to that negative energy, uh, let's say I'm having a really bad day, I'm having a really bad week, I'm having a really bad month, and I'm grumpy to my wife. After a certain time, she goes to work, and then her beautiful, loving, shiny self is no longer that. She becomes grumpy.
Mm,
And if she's
yeah,
grumpy for 2 or 3 days, the kids that she's teaching go home miserable, who then pick on their mother and father, who then go to work miserable. So everything is the collective. And again, we must be gentle with ourselves and accept, okay, I'm having a bad day, I'm having a bad week. Um, so we must deal with it. And here's a great way of dealing with it. What I've learned, again, it's in one of the talks I give. The body always follows the mind. And so when we say, you know, I'm unhappy, the mind says I'm unhappy, and the body says, okay, fellas, this is who we are. We are unhappy. That's it. There's nothing else. That's all who we are. When you have that situation, it takes longer to heal. But when you say, I am in this moment feeling the frequency of unhappiness
yeah,
only in this moment, we then position ourselves to understand that other possibilities can happen. And so it's easier to get out of this unhappiness because we know we are more than unhappiness. You know, we can say, I am in love, I feel love. Well, that's great to feel love. And you think, wow, that's great, that's all there is. But if we say, you know, happiness or love is upon me at this moment, it tells us that there is more available than love.
yeah,
What else can happen to us? So words are important, and there is a reason why it's called spelling, because words are spells. They have an energy, they have a frequency, and they cast their magic when we use them frequently. So we must be careful what we tell ourselves. We speak to ourselves, no one more than ourselves throughout the day. So we must be careful the words we choose, and so we should choose our words wisely as best we can. And so everything has words. You know, Tesla said, if you want to know the secrets to the universe, think in terms of frequency and vibration. Um, and I think he's absolutely correct. Who am I to say he's wrong? But I mean, he is absolutely correct in this. So when we start using the correct words, we can start to change and we can start to evolve within ourselves. And then we don't need to try and change other people for a better world. The change automatically happens because they're feeling it from us. And that's the
yeah.
best way of changing it. Letting somebody discover it themselves, it empowers them. And I think this is
Brilliant.
one of the most beautifulest things that we can do, because Great leaders do not fear empowered people. They welcome
No.
it and
Yes.
embellish it.
Yeah. Brilliant advice.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I think it's time. Yeah. Thank you. Really good advice. And it is important for us to think about our words because they are, well, we say a lot to ourselves, don't we? During one day, we say a
yeah,
lot to ourselves.
yeah.
So I think it's time to play Flip the Book. So would you like to pick book 1, 2, or 3?
Ooh, I think 3 is a
Mm.
lovely number. So let's go for 3.
Okay, you've got the big book, your Insight and Awareness book. So you've got 1 to 430 pages to pick from.
1 to 430 pages. Okay, let's go with my other numbers. 369.
369.
The numbers of the universe.
Well, you got 6 paragraphs to pick from.
Oh,
You got 6?
6 paragraphs to pick from. Let's go number 3.
3. Okay. So your soul denial is the crux of your soul's unconsciousness. So that's the real pit stuff, those really embedded beliefs that we've got that
Right.
cause us to forget who we actually are at the essence of who we are. Your soul denial is the crux of your soul's unconsciousness and is the storehouse of your beliefs and fears that create your misconceptions. These misconceptions cause you to anchor to the illusion of control, believing you can create security for yourself within the security of your soul's unconsciousness. Your soul's unconsciousness is built on a foundation of misconceptions. How can you feel secure within misconceptions? The version of security you seek is a falsity. It is unachievable because you are attempting to find security in denying the truth of yourself. It is a fallacy because to separate from your awareness of truth is to defend the deception generating your fears, which secure your insecurity. You cannot create security while protecting your deception. What does that paragraph make you think of?
Well, I tell you, it's very interesting because I've spent most of my life in denial who I am. And we spoke earlier about working from the heart center and being free, being your authentic, true, authentic self. And this is a reminder to me and hopefully to everyone else to be your authentic self. Don't live in denial. Don't live in the eyes of someone else. To live your life without fear, to to do things, not worrying about what anyone thinks of you, because there'll always be people that like you and dislike you, no matter what you do. And when you be your authentic self, you release so much more of that soul energy. You get so much more courage and you become fearless. And, people then see you in a different way. And the troubles that you may have had, people picking on you, seeing you as weak, suddenly stop. This is because you're no longer in denial, you're working from the heart center. And it takes courage, but it is
It
the
does.
truth. And I can testify to this because for many years growing up, I lived my life through other people's eyes. For many years, people didn't know I was a medium. For many years, I did things to please other people just for the sake of pleasing them. When it's okay to say no sometimes. And this is mastery. It's something you have to learn. And you can
Yeah.
do it with one small step at a time. So thank you for reminding me of my
Yeah.
journey.
Brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant. We love that. So I want to thank you. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.